Business generally is not easy. You get into business because there are certain things that drive you. Some of those things would be, I want to make money. Sometimes you get into business because you just want to make a statement. But by and large, people get into business because they want to make money. But it's never an easy journey. Historically, if you go back in history in terms of where we were as black people, there are things that you could do, there are things that you could not do. I went through schooling, funny enough, in Ngandla, and it was a church school, a Dutch Reformed church school, where I did my basic schooling, and then I moved to the Lutheran church school, where I did another schooling there. So all those things, it just formed the basis of my life. But at the time, I knew that there were limits in terms of what I could do that were defined by the law. Some of them, for instance, there are certain professions that I couldn't venture into. In the area where we were, there are certain subjects that I couldn't study. Mathematics and science being one of them. And it's funny, when I even passed my matric without doing mathematics and science. But what did I do? I did alchemie en rekenkunde, I did landbouw, and I did very many others, but were done in Afrikaans at the time, because we had to do that one in Afrikaans. That's how it was determined. So once I got to university and I decided to do a BCom, fortunately, the university had designed a course that will delay you for the full year whilst you're just doing maths. We call it Maths Zero, which is anything that you could have learned before you passed matric. So that enabled me to do whatever I did and pass my degrees. So in terms of leadership, I think people who stood up for me would be my father. Who in the face of, because my father was an evangelist, in the face of all the pain and of that time and the way he was treated by other people, he could stand up and say, you know what, I'm not here for people, but I'm here for the bigger calling. It's not about me, it's not about this person, it's about who sent me here. So if a person could withstand those kinds of things, I just felt that, this is really amazing. The second thing that I pick up in terms of leadership would be my brothers. In our household, the first person who did a matric was my elder brother. Oh, and I didn't know anything about matric. And then I realized, there is a matric, so I'm going to aspire to pass my matric. Then one of my brothers went on and did a law degree. And I said, there's a university, so I'll be at the university. So if those people never took steps to do whatever they were doing, I would not have known anything about that. There are others as well. There were people like, in the 50s and the 60s, early 60s, people like Sixth Street Bengu in Ngandla, who was there. He ended up on Robben Island at some point. And he started teaching my brothers and all of us about the challenges of the life that we're living. And then you realize that the life that we were living was quite abnormal, was not the real life. And then you started thinking about ways and means of living differently to what you were confined to and what you were taught. One of the things that were interesting for me was in 1961, when the Republic of South Africa was formed. We were given, as young 6-year-old kids, given medals to put on here, and we were given coins and everything, and we were singing songs of the Republic, and I didn't know anything about that, what it meant. But I remember we were going to a picnic to celebrate that, because all schools were to do that. So as we were walking towards the picnic place, we were beaten up by a group of men who said, how could you celebrate this thing? And that confused the hell out of me, because I didn't even know what was happening in the country. But if you took all those things and put them all together, they played a key role in terms of forming me and making me a person who I am. But of course, as I grew older and using those experiences, people like Steve Biko and their pronouncements, they played a key role. But there was always this big hope that there's this man and his team who are sitting in prison, and this is Nelson. One day he will come out. And that gave us that hope of leadership, that one day someone is going to come out and deal with all issues that we have. So leadership really became a constant. It was not an event, but it just happened over a period of time. As you learn certain things, as you embrace certain things, then your eyes opened up to the fact that I can do something, I can be somebody, I can make a contribution to the country. I got retrenched in 1984, and there were many reasons for that. But one of them was there was so much economic pressure on South Africa for American companies, for foreign companies to divest out of South Africa, and one of them was Ford. And I worked for Ford, and Ford had to leave the country, and therefore I got retrenched as a result of that. And I was out of a job for about 8 months or so, trying to look for a job, and I couldn't find a job, and I was flying all over the country trying to secure a place for myself. It was the most traumatic time in the sense that as a black graduate, everyone looked up to you, and they thought that once you've gotten some education, you're made. And here's a person we thought he was made. He's made, but he's not. He's just down and out. But you know what? I forgot that I had made some application 2 years before to go to the US, and I had totally forgotten about that. And I had done some interviews on that. And lo and behold, I get a telex, hey, you should be in the US. Why are you still in South Africa? So I ended up in Boston. It's a fantastic city. I don't know how many universities are there, and you could walk from one library to the other and learn as much as possible. But what was very good for me at the time, there were two things. One, the protest movement was very strong, and therefore, being South African, you were called upon to go and participate and talk to schools and talk to everyone and talk to churches and talk to even synagogues. You had to go and do the work. Why synagogues? What was very interesting is that in Russia at the time, there were lots of Jews that were sitting there, and they were trying to get them out of Russia, and they were called refuseniks at the time. So you ended up collaborating with all other nations in terms of freeing South Africa, freeing all other countries, and it became a movement. So I got sucked into that one, which was really cool, and I learned a lot out of that as an individual. But Boston provided me with an opportunity to do other things, like, for instance, I ended up do yachting, even though I don't even know how to do it today, but it was a course that I had to do. I ended up enhancing my music knowledge by participating, even though I was doing an MBA, but I ended up doing quite a few of those things. And lo and behold, I was recruited by Anglo to join their coal division, and I ended up in Johannesburg working here in 1986. When I joined Anglo, it was a time when a lot of black people were introduced into bigger corporates to do a few things. And I was brought in on the marketing side to participate there. But there are lessons that I learned there. There was a guy who was my director, James Campbell is the guy. James Campbell was a very tough human being, but he taught me quite a lot. Like, for instance, there was a time when I got in and I was working, and one of my seniors took sick, and I stepped in and I did his job, and I did it well, I thought. And I came, and eventually after 6 months, he came back, and of course I'm excited. I go to him, this is what I've been doing, I'm excited. And James called me and I said, you know what? People like you don't make it at Anglo. I said, why? It's because I think you abdicated your responsibility. What did I do wrong? He said, you should have said to this gentleman, sir, now that you're back, please go to James. He will give you your job. This is now my job. I learned for the first time that once you've got something, make sure you make the best out of it. And if you occupy a space, don't occupy it and then give it away and all those kinds of things. Those were smaller lessons, but I found them very, very useful into the future. And he taught me quite a lot. I mean, Anglo taught me a lot in terms of the business, taught me a lot in terms of the mining sector, coal and all of the others. And that was very, very important to me. Even when I went to work for Genco, that is Transnatal, which became Ingo, became Billiton, I used that knowledge that I had picked up from Anglo because I got a good foundation insofar as that one is concerned. So people like James played a key role in my life, but there were people who were larger than life in the mining industry at the time. People like Graham Boustred. Graham Boustred, when he walked the corridors of Anglo, everyone disappeared because you don't want to be confronted by the chairman. People like Gavin Relly who were there at the time, big people in South Africa. And you look at the sector today and you say, do we still have those luminaries as we used to? Because those people were very important, not because they had a cordial relationship with government. It was a love-hate relationship, as is today. But when they needed something, they would pick up a phone and can phone the Prime Minister and phone everyone, and they will have a meeting and they will fight it out, and then something will happen. Give an example. The coal industry in South Africa became internationalized the way it was, simply because of the oil crisis in 1971-72. And as a result of that, the business in South Africa said, well, we've got coal. Let's go to government and say, you build a line, we will build the port and the mines. And South Africa will make it to will use that opportunity, which is why today we're benefiting and using those kinds of and having those kinds of advantages. It's because of people who became visionary in the way they look at life, and then they were not afraid to take a stand and deal with the situation. I got involved in a lot of ways in business, in creating ASCs, for instance. It was not something that I wanted to do, but it's amazing that a lot of people surrounding me, particularly my ex-leaders at Anglo, at Billiton and the others, came to me and said, you can do this. Because why? Because you've had enough training. And after a long time and after reflection, I realized that I could start an organization. I could put a team together. Why? I had the knowledge. I had done time, and I had the skill to do it. And therefore, I knew I could never fail because I had all those things. And I had the vision, I had the resolve to make those things work. So I got involved in that. So what is quite funny is that all the things that I had learned over a period of time, like, for instance, all people that played a key role in my life, I never destroyed bridges towards them and dealing with them. And it's very important that you never destroy bridges in life, because you never know when those would come could come in handy at a particular point in time, which is what happened to me. So when we created ASCs and therefore morphing into Exaro, what was very central to me is that, one, it was important for me and my kids and my generation for us to know that, as black people, we could be CEOs. 2, we can run successful organizations. 3, we can compete effectively with any other person around the world. And I believe that we managed to achieve that one, because all the things that we did at Exaro, at ASCs, would attest to that fact that everyone given a chance can do it. It doesn't matter whether you are black or white or whatever it is, but you can make things happen. So that was really remarkable for me. So the leadership aspect was very important. But remember, South Africa was transforming at the time as well. And there were areas where when you talk to white people, they probably didn't think that you were the best person. Give you an example. not too long ago at Exara, probably 4 years or 3-4 years ago, there was a lady who was complaining a lot about her boss, the way she was treated. She's a black lady. And eventually he ended up making statements, disparaging statements against me, who was his boss at the time. So I got involved in that conversation, and I could have fired him. So I chose not to fire him. But I said to him, you haven't been doing good to this lady. You haven't treated her well. Your survival in this organization depends on how you develop her now. In 6 months' time, we meet. And if she is satisfied with the progress that you are making, you've got your job. Otherwise, you're gone. So it's those kinds of things that we dealt with. Among black people as well. There were those that, and they will tell you today amongst union, who never believed that black people could do that one. I sat in one function, and one guy walked in, and he walked past me, and he talked to a guy working for Ingwe. It became Billiton. Hey, Mnumzan, why are you giving the business to these people? What do they know about business? Yeah, it was there. So I saw my role as a person who needed to heal people, to heal the nation, to heal my team. And I'll tell you what, I think we've gone a long way in creating a people who mirror or who could be what South Africa would be if we did things correctly. There are people that I met along the way. I mentioned James Campbell, mentioned Gordon Osterloh, but there are other people like Ivan Glazenberg. Glazenberg, I've never seen such energy in a human being and being such a visionary. Glazenberg, of course, ended up creating this massive organization that we call today Glencore because of his vision. Yeah, he lives in Switzerland today, but he still considers South Africa home because of what South Africa did for him. Glazenberg taught me a lot about the business, about marketing, about interacting with other races as well. I think it was really incredible dealing with him. And of course, there's above all that, there's a big gentleman, larger than life, the tower, Mr. Mandela, really. So whatever you did, at some point you just felt that if I did it well, even Mandela would say, well done, my man. Because you saw a man, probably, you thought, not that he didn't have his own flaws, but he had this leadership. He had respect for human being, but he could make things happen. Once he has taken a decision on something, something happened. We remember those decisions that he took about nationalization. He took a stand on that one, and the organization followed him. He took a stand when there was this massacre at Bisho, and people were very angry, and he walked in there and he dealt with the situation. He took a stand even in Buibatong when things were bad there. He walked in. So if there's a man who could walk into fire, I said to myself, well, I also can try. Of course, his shoes are too big and ugly for me, as Thabo would say. But, I could do my small steps in trying to do something. So he played a key role in shaping all of us to be who we are. If you look at the mining sector and just the country in general, the country has to contend and compete with everyone around the world. And if South Africa is going to play that role, we need skills. We need education to work for us. If education doesn't work for us, we will forever be relegated to a footnote. And therefore, skills development is critical. Our education, the way it talks to where the world is going, I think that's very, very important. Whenever I speak to people, when I was at Exar, I would say to them, make sure that you look after your kids. Make sure that they go to school. Make sure that they study the right kind of disciplines, because that is what is required going forward. Who knew that today in the mining sector. Iron ore, for instance, if you took Rio Tinto in Australia, you could run a mine producing huge tonnages, over 100 or 200 or 300 million tons, by and large being automated and driven at a control room. And you could never compete with those people because the market, there's only one market where you're selling all the stuff. And if you're going to be saddled with lots of cost in South Africa, you're not going to make it. If you can't produce at the rate that they require, you're not going to make it. So those things are very critical. I mean, I look at the coal business, what is happening insofar as renewables is concerned, what is happening insofar as shale gas is concerned, and all those things point to the fact that your coal business, your coal asset that is sitting in the country could be challenged. So unless you use certain skills and develop them, you won't be able to exploit what you have in the country. Look at gold. We still have the largest base in the world. But of course, you have to go deep. And unless you find technology to deal with that, it's not going to work. So skills development is important, but we must make sure that we develop people who are going to be relevant in that space, because that's critical. And that is why now that I'm retired from Exxaro, one of the things that I'm focusing on, we created an organization which we call Talent 10, and it's the multiplication and the creation of more talents in people. We're looking at skills development, we're looking at enterprise development, we're looking at more technology in terms of that we're introducing more technology in mining so that we take the country forward, and also to advance the skills base of everyone. Without that, we are dead as a country. One of the things that I always think about, and my biggest regrets that I will always have, having worked in the mining sector, is to see someone dying. So the levels of fatalities, injuries in this sector, it's one of the things that will always remain with me. But I will tell you that the industry, if you go back in 73, where the industry used to kill, we had more than 500 people dying in 1 year. Last year, we probably had about 73 people. So that's progress. But why I raise the issue of safety and raise the issue of fatalities is when, as a leader, you have to face the people who have lost someone. I never realized how painful it is. At one mine at Shkondeni, we went there, and there's this young lady who just lost her husband. Her husband was probably 31, 32, and she was 22, 23. And she had nothing. And they walked in as I walked in. They went to that site, that place where he had fallen. And she sat there at that particular space where the guy was lying, had died. And she was just, I don't know, she was trying to collect the sand or the ground there. But it was the most painful, and you're seeing there and you're watching it. So it was the leadership has its own painful process, and that was one of them. Second one is facing the cycles. As we faced in 1990, in 2008. 2008 was a very tough year for the industry. I remember calling the team and saying, let's have a conversation about that. But government were good, and they approached all of us as the industry and said, whatever you do, please try and preserve jobs. And we took a decision that with all the pain that we've got, we will never lose a single person, we'll never retrench a person. We sacrificed all other things, but not people. Why not? Because we understood what that could do to other people going forward. Because when you look at a person, you must think of 6 other people behind that person that person is dealing with. And you look at the implications of that in terms of stabilizing the country, because the country could easily become unstable if you have lots of people who are unemployed. So that was a very challenging time. And recently, up until now, things are still bad in the industry, very, very bad. And we are now getting into retrenchments as a result of that. But we try to find ways of ensuring that people are cushioned. And that's the part that is very, very painful. But there are parts that are great. We created a scheme at Exxaro, we call it Empower, where every employer, from a cleaner to everyone, would participate in some kind of a share scheme. And I remember probably 4 years ago, we paid out those amounts to people. Can you imagine a person earning 5,000 rands a month? One day you wake up, you earn 135 just as a lump sum, and what that did to people. And people just, you could sense that they could go pay off their debt. Others, of course, they do all sorts of things. They buy cars and they prank them the day after. But, it's part of understanding the business and the investment thesis, which is really critical in the way we do things. So there have been tough moments, like the ones that I've mentioned, but there are others as well. I was president of the Chamber of Mines. Tough dealing with government, and when the laws are changing. Tough dealing with the charter negotiations. Tough dealing with all sorts of things, including the investor community who are outside South Africa, who do not understand what is happening in South Africa. You find that you go see them once talking about your business because they're investors. You're going to spend 20 minutes just talking about the country, defending the country, doing this. No, things are not as bad as they are because people threaten you with all sorts of things. Dealing with those things is not an easy thing. But you know what? I'm very grateful. That's the most important thing, that I'm grateful that I've been given an opportunity of leading people, of leading a bunch of people who were prepared to do time and prepared to walk an extra mile so that we make a contribution to this society and this economy. The most important thing is business and business leaders ought to have a vision. I think that's very important, that they have a vision in terms of their own businesses. 2, it is critical that they are becoming more proactive than more reactive. In the greater part of times, we tend to react to what is happening to us. Like when the laws are changing, we react. But we are not there to propose solutions. South Africa cries for change. Communities cry for change. It is incumbent to business to walk into the corridors of power and suggest things that they think could make a difference in people's life, rather than wait for someone to say, now I'm putting the law, this is how it is. So if we did that, we buy the confidence of the general public in business. Then they believe in business. Right now, they see us as a bunch of capitalists who go about making money and not looking after themselves. We're looking after ourselves and not them. But if we were to be more integrated with greater society, I think things would be better. It also goes with the way I mentor people. Mentorship is critical in this instance. You will notice that one if you worked amongst people, worked among communities. There are certain things that businesses could do at school level, at community level, in ensuring that the country is working in sync. I truly believe that South Africans are very resilient people. I believe that they are strong people. I think we are very blessed with good leadership in this country, let alone the fact that there are moments when we don't see that happening. But for some reason, leaders do emerge, and I truly believe that we're going to see quite a lot of that happening. If you go back in history, in the 20s, the 30s, you look at a person called Dr. Hendrik van der Bijl. Dr. Hendrik van der Bijl was instrumental in creating Eskom, was able to create ISCOR, was there to create the IDC, the first navy that we have in the country, all of that packaged in one person, and until the 40s. But if you look at him and whether he gained financially, there's absolutely nothing. He just worked for the love of the country because he felt that South Africa deserved to be in a better space than where it is. So it's not necessarily about money all the time, but it is about leading your people to better pastures, leading your organization to a better situation, leading your family to a better position, not necessarily about making money, and giving them confidence that they can face the world and deal with them. One of the things that made me choose to go and work full-time in the business as opposed to becoming just an investor in business, it's because I had done time, I had the skill, I had the knowledge, and those things are critical. And I could therefore go there, and the young generation looking behind me, they will know that, actually, and my son today can tell you that my dad could become a CEO, so I can also become. My dad was a leader, I can also become. It doesn't necessarily have to be about money. We can make money, but leadership is going beyond the money aspect.